My name is Bob Zimmer, and I am the founder and president of the Baseball Heritage Museum at League Park. And we really want to welcome everybody today to League Park. This is a city facility, and it's been growing rapidly. The whole neighborhood has been growing. I really want to welcome everybody here today, and I need to recognize a couple people. For some of you that don't know the history of the Baseball Heritage Museum, I think history is important, obviously, because you're all here, and one of our main goals here is to continue to tell the story of Sandlot ball. But the Baseball Heritage Museum the idea started in 1997 when Cleveland was hosting the All-Star game, and my father had a jewelry business downtown on East 4th. It was suggested that I reach out to a fellow by the name of Wilmer Fields. Wilmer Fields really planted the seed for what we see here today. Wilmer was the president of the Negro League Baseball Players Association, and he was going to come in and do what I thought was going to be a fireside chat for one day and a little autograph session. And he said, well, why don't you do a Hall of Fame for my group of players that played in the Negro Leagues? And I said, okay. And that grew. We looked at expanding the concept beyond Negro League baseball, and we look at the multicultural aspects of the game. We look at Negro League baseball, Latin baseball. We look at professional baseball, youth baseball, and Sandlot baseball. We believe Sandlot baseball is vital to the growth, not just of the game of baseball, but to our communities. So I think as we go through today, you're going to hear from some people that have been very active with you, and it goes beyond the game of baseball. Everybody here grew and have all kinds of professions and have done some amazing things, and we want to keep telling that story so we can encourage young people to get involved in the game of baseball and teamwork. I also want to recognize the Councilwoman Fannie Lewis. Without Fannie Lewis's vision, this park would not be here. It would have been torn down and built up on something else. She wanted to preserve the field. She wanted a museum in the ticket house, and I hope she's looking down at us today and saying, wow, this really has taken place. I also want to thank the City of Cleveland. Tim Wells is here today. I'm sure you all know Tim. But we're very excited about not just today, but the growth that we're seeing, and we want to do this on an annual basis. I mean, most of you, I think, were here at the last reunion that we had, and it was a great turnout. And today's a great turnout as well. So we want to continue to tell the story about the game of baseball, Sandlot. I'd like to not take up a lot of time because I know there's a lot of other people that want to speak. I'd like to introduce the gentleman that you all know, so he doesn't really need a whole lot of introduction. But without his efforts, this would not have happened the way that it's happened. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Al Drews. And if we could all welcome Al up here to the podium. I'll hand that off to you, Al.
Thanks, Bob. While I'm getting my stuff together, there's some extra seats up here, so you don't have to stand. You're welcome to come on up. I won't be upset if you move while I'm talking, so don't worry about it. Thank you, Bob. Oh, one other thing. This is off the cuff. I'm wearing the navy blue, and I'm wearing the Wenham orange today because I'm marrying the two best baseball teams I ever played for, Western Michigan and the Wenham Truckers. I got them married, okay? And they're close to my heart. That's off the cuff. But anyway, I want to thank you, Bob, for giving us old-timers this opportunity to gather again to talk about the good old days of Sandlot baseball and celebrate all you have done to establish the League Park Heritage Museum, one of Cleveland's crown jewels. We are also extremely grateful that you and Ricardo Rodriguez have granted us this permission to continue to use League Park for future Sandlot reunions on the last Saturday in August. on a yearly basis. That's big, because our guys can know, and I want you to keep your program cards, because that's Frank's team. And you can contact any one of those guys. All that information is there. So if you have any questions, come around this time next year, you can contact any one of us. So it'll give our old-timers ample notice to mark their calendars in advance to make arrangements to attend. And I just said that. We just included the directory of old-timers. Before I say anything else, I also want to thank John Babin for printing our program and being so professional and flexible in doing so. You will not see his name on this program anywhere. He did it last year too. He did a super job. It's really excellent, and that's important to us, to have that directory. I told John, I said, if I had a ball club, you would be my closer, and I sincerely meant that. I also want to thank Phil Bova, my committee co-chairman over here, for all he's done to promote this event through media coverage. This was huge in getting the word out to our old-timers, and we're extremely grateful to him for making this happen. He also made arrangements for ordering and securing the John Negi plaque, which will remain at the museum. Phil does everything with excellence, and I really appreciate him. Another gentleman we want to thank is Tim Wells of the Cleveland Recreation Department for his support in arranging to have TV 20 in Cleveland cover our gathering today. Not only that, Tim arranged to have Ray Schmatzer honored in a very special way today, which I will talk about shortly. We're also glad you joined our team, Tim. Thank you. And I'm going to give you some information while we're talking about TV 20. This program is being videoed by TV 20, and I want to tell you how you can access it. You can pull up, in about a week, you can go to YouTube and punch in YouTube at Cleveland TV 20 Cleveland, okay? Another way you can access this program is through Spectrum Cable 1020. So if you have Spectrum, you can, go to Spectrum Cable and punch in 1020. And this program will be airing in about a week, and more likely to happen in the evenings or in the mornings. I couldn't get the exact times, but you can start looking in about a week. So I wanted to mention that to you. And if you couldn't write this down, you can't remember it, you call me or call any one of the guys on the committee, and we'll give you that information again. Now, I got to celebrate one more person. You'll notice our reunion now has a name attached to it. It will from now on, be called the Frank Petruno Old Timers Annual Sandlot Baseball Reunion. This is an expression of honor and gratitude to Frank for everything he's done to promote all the previous reunions of Sandlot old-timers that have taken place prior to today. It all started many years ago when he called the players he knew to gather at London Pickle Works in Brecksville. And he would do this shortly after Christmas, when the guys were ready to bust out of the house, Frank was sharp. He knew when to call these meetings. Plus, a lot of guys were back in town with their families. The gathering later moved to Mulligan's in Strongsville, and in 2018 he joined forces with David Schmatzer to promote our reunion on this League Park field for an old-timers baseball game, and that was a huge success. Frank is here today, so I want to make sure that you check in with him to thank him and let him tell you some of his great Sandlot stories, because he's got a million of them. He's sitting right up here, and I have something I have to give him that is very appropriate. It's called Local celebrity. And I'm in the process of trying to get a banner to fly over the city of Cleveland with a plane. I'm just kidding. Enjoy this, Frank. You deserve it. I'm going to talk about Ray Schmatzer, but I want to express my gratitude to all the guys listed in our program under the title of Frank's Team. They have all been very supportive and willing to do anything I've asked them to do. Frank was a master at gathering talent for his baseball teams, and this team was no exception. I also want to make sure you check out all those who contributed to today's reunion. Their names are listed on this program, and there's many people that made this thing possible today. I'm going to turn the mic over to Danny Coughlin to talk about John Negi. But before I do that, I want to talk about Ray Schmatzer. No Sandlot gathering would ever be complete without his name coming up. The word, quote unquote, legend is often used today, overused, I think, to describe exceptional people. In my mind, Ray Schmatzer is truly a Sandlot legend and most deserving of this description. And I'm sure that those who were impacted by him would definitely agree. I could go on and on talking about his effects on our sport, but instead I'll try to encapsulate why I think he's a legend. He spent over 40 years teaching, promoting, and coaching baseball and basketball to Cleveland's youth, and he did it in a classy manner. In 13 years of managing Jay Schrader's, his record was an incredible 340 wins and 110 losses, and he was manager of the year in 1970 and 72. I really don't think there's ever been a Class AAA manager to ever top this record. And if there is, let me know. I want to know who that man is. He coached at all levels of ability, from Class F at Brookside Park, Mickey Mantle, Connie Mack, and Class AAA, and also managed to serve in the D-Day invasion when called away from coaching during the war. Ray excelled and was well known on the baseball diamond for many years and played on many top-notch Class A teams in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I think in the 50s he managed as well as played. He was a devoted family man who fathered 6 children and was dedicated to his Catholic faith, serving his church in many roles. His son Dave, and I've really gotten to know Dave, I've had a lot of conversations with him, told me he never heard his dad curse or saw him smoke or take a drink. All of these characteristics add up to what I would call a role model. Because of his awesome moral character, Ray used his coaching abilities as a vehicle to develop future gentlemen in his athletes, and that was his main goal. He was all about service, and he walked the talk. I could mention many other awards that Ray received, but those will be saved for next year's reunion when he will be our featured honoree. Because of the short notice of his addition to our program, the committee decided to revisit him next year when all of his family could attend, as well as all those athletes who were not aware of today's recognition. However, his daughter, Ann Pershey, there you are, Ann, is in our audience. And I was going to ask you to come forward to receive this tribute of gratitude for your father. And I can bring it to you. Oh, you got it. There. Oh, I said, I'm going to read what it says. And Raymond Schmatzer, Recognition Award for contributions to Cleveland Sandlot baseball program for over 40 years of volunteer service. And underneath it says, a true role model for the people he served. Started as youth playing in 1930s, won many baseball championships, began coaching in the early 50s, coached on all levels, from youth to adults, coached for over 30 years. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to present this to Ann. One last thing I want to say before I give this mic to Danny Codlin. We're thinking about you, Tim Schmatzer.
Thank you for your description of Ray Schmatzer. I thought you were talking about me. I'm going to talk a little bit about John Negi. It'll take me about 5-6 minutes. So, John was appointed. By the way, I wrote this out because at my age, I can't remember anything anymore. Well, John Negi was appointed Cleveland Recreation Director in 1943 at the age of 26. I didn't know him then, of course. In 1943, every other healthy 26-year-old man was in the war fighting the Japanese and the Nazis. But John had just graduated, or had graduated from Ohio State and had a nice job with the city, a job that lasted 40 years. John had some principles, which he never varied from. For example, he refused to hire anyone with an IQ over 140 because he believed that they would soon become bored with the work. And so all you guys who worked for John Negi will know that you were not the sharpest. But you had the good sense to stay employed. 5 years into his tenure, his department included 150 playgrounds, 18 gyms, 11 pools, 77 tennis courts, and 1 traveling zoo. I myself don't remember the traveling zoo. We have one in our backyard right now. We're surrounded, every suburb, every backyard is a traveling zoo, except they don't travel. The deer stay right there. At its peak, his recreation department had 593 full-time employees. Wow, that was the year 1969. And they were all on the city pension plan. In addition, many were also Cleveland teachers and coaches, and so they were on the Cleveland Public Schools pension plan. Life was good back then. Plus, in addition to that, you drew Social Security. That's why all these retirees bought a place in Sarasota. Much of what affected our lives began and ended in Room 8 City Hall, John Negi's office. Autographed copies of this talk will be available later. Room 8, that's where you signed up for every sports program on every baseball field, softball diamond, park, playground, gym, pool, court, and course. Tiger Young would sit just inside the door and direct traffic in his charming, congenial manner. And then Mary Jane Bolden would try to put the pieces back together. Amazingly, Tiger and Mary Jane later got married. Nobody could figure out that one. Yes. The flagship of Cleveland Recreation, of course, was baseball. Our baseball program was considered the best in the country, and not a dime of tax money was used except for the upkeep of the diamonds. Everything else, your tax money was not involved. But for the operation of the leagues, John raised the money through private donations. That's where, as George Newman was recalling to me yesterday, He said there was a guy, before every one of their games when he was class F and up, a guy would come by, for every game gave everybody a new ball. He said that was the only time we ever got a new ball, was when we played in one of Cleveland leagues. Everything else was wrapped in black and electrician's tape. So John raised the money through his private donations, what he called the Century Club. We put the names in the paper, in the Plain Dealer, of the people who donated at least, I don't know if you really need this on. No, you don't. Can you hear me? Okay, you asked for it. Yeah, anybody who donated $100 got his name in the paper, a member of John Negi Century Club. The first one every year was Al Sutphin. He always donated $500. Back in the 60s, that was a lot of money back then. That was almost as much as Nabi Lewandowski made with every client. Plus, the Indians always played a mid-season exhibition game at the stadium, usually against the Reds or the Pirates, always part of a doubleheader. The second half of the doubleheader was one of the Class A teams played. Two of them played. And attendance usually was 20 to 30,000. All proceeds went to the Cleveland Baseball Federation. That was the separate entity that paid for Sandlot baseball here. Some years, John threw a championship banquet at a classy downtown hotel for all of the baseball champions. I'll never forget one year, John brought in a main speaker from Washington, D.C. One of the sports columnists there, it wasn't Shirley Povich, it was another guy who was hilarious. The banquet was in the main ballroom of the Carter Hotel, which was a fairly fancy hotel at the time. And the meal was good. It was meat, not chicken. So, John and his wife had one child, a daughter, Kathleen. But he treated many of his athletes like his own children. For example, he would put the touch on his well-heeled friends, such as George Steinbrenner, to support amateur athletes who were headed to the a smooth transition, huh? Who were headed to the Olympics. Madeleine Manning was one. She won a gold medal in track in the 1968 Olympics. Steinbrenner paid her way to the Olympic trials. John had his hand in everything. He was a member of the U.S. Olympic Committee, very influential in the Olympics. When he returned from an international Olympic meeting in Amsterdam, he gave me an expensive pair of cufflinks that were gifts to all the attendees, gifts from the Dutch Olympic Committee. John was a leading figure in the AAU. The Knights of Columbus ran the annual KFC track meet at the arena, but John was involved. The Golden Gloves boxing tournament was another. And then there was the citywide slow-pitch softball tournament. The pairings were made in John's office at night, and the Teamsters were never happy with how it came out. The City Marbles tournament was organized there. Ida Jean Hoppy Hopkins won the City Marbles Championship at 12 years old. And speaking of Hoppy, whom we remember as a softball player, she also became an Olympian because of John. When luge was added to the Winter Olympics back in about 1968 or so, America had no lugers. So John put Hoppy on the U.S. Winter Olympic team as a luger. I don't know anything about luging, Hoppy said. It's easy, said John. It's like the bobsled. You just slide down the bobsled run in the sled. So she did. She crashed and damn near killed herself. She badly hurt her back, which knocked her out of medal contention. She lives off Memphis here. She's still around. And if you run into her, ask her about that sled. They let her keep it. She has it in the attic of her house just off Memphis on the west side. Now, this might be the most remarkable thing about John Negi. For 4 decades, he weathered Cleveland's changing politics. Now, the recreation director was a cabinet-level position, a political appointment. Usually, Democrats controlled City Hall, but occasionally a Republican got in there, like Ralph Perk. Nobody fooled with John Negi, because even the Republicans knew nobody could do it better. That's the end. Thank you.
This is the memorial plaque for John Negi that will stay at the museum. It reads, "With gratitude, John S. Negi, Cleveland Recreation Commissioner, 1943 to 1983. Thank you for being the force behind Cleveland Sandlot Baseball's golden era, a time when the Sandlot Baseball program was one of our nation's finest." From the Cleveland Sandlot Old Timers, August 27, 2022.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to leave it here until the after.
Hello everyone, my name is Ricardo Rodriguez. I'm the museum director here at the Baseball Heritage Museum at League Park. Thanks for coming in today. It's a great honor to be talking in front of everybody. Al asked me to speak a little bit about the museum, what we do, and how we do it, and why we do it. So the museum, housed in the historic ticket house at League Park, we find it very important to exhibit, preserve, present the stories of baseball. If you're coming for stats and that stuff, there's other people that do that better probably, but we really hang our hats on the stories and the humanity behind the game. So how we do that is by preserving. What do we preserve? Artifacts and tangible goods that you may have. We present them in a way that tells a story, and these are important components to preserving the past. And without these artifacts and preserving these artifacts, it's very easy for these stories to be lost and forgotten. And that's really what we try to do here at the Baseball Heritage Museum, is preserve these stories. So maybe you're asking, what can you do to help us do this? Maybe you have some artifacts from when you or somebody in your family played sandlot ball. A uniform, baseballs, original photos, letters, identification cards, anything like that. Stuff that you may not necessarily think is historically valuable, just very well may be extremely historically valuable to us, and very worth preserving. So I ask you to keep that in mind as you finish up here today, and you go home and you see that little box in the corner of your attic that may have a box of junk. And I use these quotes very, very loudly. It's not junk, this is history, and this is what we do. We want this stuff to preserve it and carry it on for future generations. And nobody here probably knows that better and exhibits that better than Frank Petruno. Frank, he is, I talk to him usually in a good week more than my mother. So and it's always a pleasure. So he's on top of what it takes to help the museum keep going. Thanks, Frank. He has donated stats, photos, newspaper clippings, which are all, well, not all, we don't have enough room in the museum to display all that stuff in one day, but there's a bunch of his stuff right now in the museum that you guys can go and take a look at. 5 brand new panels that he created, beautifully put together, that tells a great story of Sandlot ball and his involvement and all, you know, everybody on his team. So I ask you, again, go ahead and take a look at Frank's work, the work that the museum does every day in the museum. And if you are wondering how else you may be able to help, I'm going to toss it over to Nabi. And Nabi Lumdansky is going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit more.
Those of you who have never heard me speak, I stutter. I don't want sympathy because I'm a CPA and I get paid by the hour. So, but that's okay. What I would like to speak with you about a little bit is the way that the Wenham truckers began. This was back in the early to mid 1960s. Mr. Fred Wenham and Mr. Lou Richardson, well, Harlow Fox was the manager of Wenham's. And I had the misfortune of playing for him. Mr. Wenham rang me and said, "Hey, Nabi, we would like to meet with you." So Mr. Fred Wenham, Lou Richardson, and I had a meeting. And they said, "Hey, we'd like you to be the manager of Wenham baseball team next year." I said, "Thank you for the honor, but I am not a manager. I'm a pitcher, and I really like pitching, but I know who can bring us a winner." So I introduced him to Frank Petruno. And in between Frank and I, we had a lot of friends playing Class A baseball. So we rounded up. I mean, really, we went one by one. Jerry Patrick's going to be our first baseman. Paul Stephan's going to be our third baseman. John Sigmund, Phil Bova, on and on and on. And we handpicked out who were the best players in Class A. Well, if you realize it, in the mid-60s, we won the championship every year. And it was really, really fun being a part of that organization. Now, here we are being recognized at the Heritage Baseball Museum. No other amateur baseball player, guys, and thank you, all you guys, for scoring a lot of runs when I was pitching, because everything worked out well. But what I want to speak with you about is beyond baseball. I remember growing up and I started school, my father gave me something significant. Best of luck, kid. But look at all the great things we have had. That is why I have the Heritage Baseball Museum written in my will and trust to receive $100,000 when I die. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. It's a small way to say thank you. Do any of us have the thoughts or the ambition that we're going to either write a check or leave a life insurance policy to this great organization which is going to have out there forever the Wenham Truckers baseball team and the Wenham organization? Fred Wenham and Lou Richardson, thank you for calling me, having faith in me, and look at what we were able to develop. You have great infielders and outfielders and great hitters. Boy, you can be a pretty good pitcher. And so I want to say thank you to everyone that helped me win baseball games. Now, I'm not saying that you should do this. All I'm recommending is that you think about it. Think about a way that we can perpetuate this Heritage Baseball Museum by helping Bob Zimmer and his group to do all the wonderful things that they have done. We are the only amateur baseball team recognized here. You know what an honor that is? And a small way to say thank you, because many of us have made an earning beyond that best of luck handshake. So all I want to say, think about how can you help this here great organization even grow above and beyond where it is, either by making a contribution or leaving them in your will. Bob Zimmer, thank you for all of your hard work and efforts. This is something which is going to outlive all of us. And everyone's going to see Wenham Truckers. Thank you, Bob Zimmer, and thank you, everyone, for listening to me. And you can see why I am fairly successful, because I get paid by the hour. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for coming and showing up today. We'll hope to see you next year. We have to leave the building before 2 o'clock because there's another group coming in. Spend the rest of this time showering each other with love and telling all those baseball stories. We still got pizza and we still got drink. Thanks again.